Safety. IDT HSC Unit Overview for the revised 2022 syllabus. So we are going to take a look at the safety unit and specifically looking at it in the context of the HSC requirements and what content you need to know in preparation for the exam. So what we've done here is we've taken a look at the syllabus and we've broken it down into its subheadings and trying to highlight key points in your understanding the overall unit. So the first area we'll look at is that of work health and safety. And essentially, what is it? It relates to duty of care and the fact that all workers within a workplace are responsible for maintaining safety within the workplace. There are elements related to it, such as participation and consultation, in that communication is happening and that everyone is acting on it. And then there are key bodies who all have responsibilities and duties and rights to ensure that it's working efficiently within a workplace. In relation to responsibility, we talk about all workers acting within their scope, meaning that if you're a worker, a manager, a health safety representative, or the employer, within your scope, you're all attending to taking initiative, problem solving, and making appropriate decisions based on your problem solving in attending to safety matters. We also have the key bodies outside an organization when it comes to safety. These are the groups that we refer to for either guidance or support when attending to issues of safety within the workplace. So these groups include the main governing body, which is Safe Work Australia, which is the national body. And then within New South Wales, there is the New South Wales branch, Safe Work NSW. SafeWork is the national body and they are a part of the government. But then outside SafeWork, we also have other groups such as local councils, and they all attend to their all geographical destinations in relation to safety. We've got unions who represent workers in all different industries, and then professional associations where people with industries can communicate and share ideas. From here, then we move into WHS compliance, and this means what do we need to do to ensure that we are being compliant with the laws established in relation to WHS and what support material is there to ensure that our workplace is safety. So in this area, we look at compliance documentation, examples of legislation and codes of practices, reporting procedures, and the consequences of non-compliance. So, in relation to compliance documentation, at our highest level, we have what's known as an act, and that is a law made by government. Okay, and there, in relation to safety, it is the Work Health and Safety Act 2011. Underneath the act, a regulation is then made, and the regulations go into even further detail about how we actually meet the requirements of law. The regulation itself is also considered law. From here, then we move into a range of codes of practice, and each of these codes attends to specific parts of either an act or a regulation. So, in relation to work health and safety, there'd be codes of practice in existence for specifically risk assessment or the management of hazardous materials. Each would be their own code, and that provides specific detail on that element of the actual act or regulation. Underneath that, we have standards, which have specific numeric values detailing a minimum level of quality that needs to be achieved when actually meeting a criteria in relation to the act or regulation or code of practice. And then outside of all of this, we have what's known as guidance material. And guidance material just helps even further support us with general information that can help us achieve the requirements of any of that compliance documentation. Next, then we have who do we actually report to when we're reporting. Now, reporting can be done either in a written format, in a verbal format, and through those methods, it can be formal and informal. Okay, which details whether it's recorded or not, and can be referred to in future if following up on whether an actual safety matter has been attended to. When we report, we can report to specific people within the workplace, and that might be the PCBU. And you're going to see that acronym pop up a few times here. That's the employer, and it refers to a person conducting business or undertaking, where the main responsibility falls upon in relation to work health and safety legislation. Okay, so they are at the top of the chain, okay, within a workplace with safety matters. A workplace may also select a HSR, which is a health and safety representative. This is a person selected by workers, they're usually elected by workers, okay, to represent them in safety matters, and they are given powers underneath the legislation in order to enforce safety legislation within the workplace and ensure that the workplace is up to scratch. And they may be the ones who need to refer to external bodies such as Safe Work New South Wales when things are not being attended to, or just for guidance in how to address specific matters. And then we also have managers within workplaces as well who are in charge of their departments and often will hear reports from their employees or the teams they manage in relation to safety concerns. And then we might also have external bodies come in, such as inspectors, in order to give reviews of workplace, conduct safety audits, and then tick off checklists and ensure that safety is being adhered to within a specific workplace. In relation to consequences for non-compliance, an inspector might identify that areas aren't being attended to. Same with the HSR, they might shut down areas. This could lead to safe work getting involved, giving out fines, or even leading to potentially PCBUs going to jail if places are that neglected. Okay, so there are many consequences there for not complying with safety legislation. So really, you need to know your compliance documentation and work with Safe Work in understanding the safety requirements of a specific workplace. Okay, and then as said, when we refer our information, it can be formal or informal, it can be written, it can be verbal, those combinations all being made up, determining whether or not the actual reports being made are actually formalized and being recorded so they can be referred to in future to see whether a problem's been solved, or if it hasn't been solved, well, here's the paper trail, what's been done, and that could lead to further consequences for an employer. The next area is that of hazard identification and risk management. And here we're really talking about the risk management procedure within workplaces. So first we need to understand what is a hazard and what is a risk and its relationship. Essentially, a hazard is any element of workplace that can cause harm, and a risk is the likelihood of that hazard causing harm. And then from here, we go into the stages of risk management. So that of hazard identification, what are the hazards within a workplace? Risk assessment, what is the likelihood of that hazard causing harm? Risk control, the measures we bring in to help us reduce the amount of risk associated with a hazard, and then consistently monitoring and reviewing our practices to ensure that they are up to date, as well as highlighting any new hazards that might be appearing within the workplace. So, in relation to hazards, we need to know different types of hazards, such as electricity, equipment, materials, humans themselves, manual handling, and things that come from the work environment. We then assess all their risks, and then from here we put in our risk control methods, and they are divided into three subcategories, which have subcategories of their own as well. But essentially, the three main subcategories are that of eliminating the risk, which is getting rid of the risk completely; substituting the risk, which means implementing a procedure such as substitution, changing, or isolating, or bringing in a control that allows us to manage the actual hazard and reduce its risk; and then other controls as well, which might be administrative controls and PPE, which allow us to put in procedures just around how we work ourselves around the hazard to keep ourselves safe within the working environment. And then, as said, whatever practices we bring in relation to hazards, we need to continually monitor and review them to ensure that safety is maintained within the workplace. Next, we have consultation and participation, and you've already seen this come up here on this mind map. This was a big part of the Work Health and Safety Legislation 2011, okay, in that workplaces are active in communication with everyone talking about safety, having the ability to forward matters and raise their concerns, and then for PCBUs, the employer, to get back to employees and in addressing or how they're going about it. Communication is paramount for maintaining safe workplaces. So in this area, we're looking at opportunities for consultation and participation, the roles and responsibilities of different bodies, how to identify, report, and respond to matters, okay, in relation to WHS, how people can be trained, and the use of data and evidence. Okay, the roles and responsibilities, and we mentioned a few of these people before. We've got the PCBU, the employer themselves, having the most responsibility, the elected HSR having powers that are supported by WorkCover New South Wales and legislation, the managers who are in charge of their teams. Okay, but then going on from there, we also have ourselves, us working in the workplace. We have the responsibility to follow rules and ensure that we're being safe and not endangering anyone, and that we are following the safety rules and make sure that what we do isn't endangering our fellow workers. Okay, and our workers that we work with, they're exactly the same. They have that same responsibility. Unions too have a responsibility here once again, okay, because they are the kind of first point of call for the average worker when going external to an organization. Okay, they're not going to call WorkCover. That's more safe work. That's more going to be the actual HSR themselves. A general employee is more likely going to call their union if they feel like there's a major issue. So they play a key role in ensuring that safety takes place when representing the workers. We also have ways of identifying and reporting. Okay, so this could be just as simple as discussions. Okay, and as said, when we talked about ways of reporting, okay, that is a verbal way of reporting. But then we also do have our surveys too, which can be done for written records. Okay, and they can obviously be recorded. Okay, training as well is a way of actually helping people understand how to manage hazards, okay, and ways to go about things. Inspectors may use a WHS audit to document how a work environment's working. As said, they'd use a checklist with predefined criteria, and that criteria could be ticked off and have comments written on, and the inspector could use that as their notes and give it back to an organization, letting them know how they can improve the environment, okay, when they do conduct a workplace inspection. This data and evidence obtained from here can then be used within a workplace now to inform the workplace of areas they need to improve upon and areas they're doing well, and in the kind of positive way as well, be used to empower and establish safety culture. If workplace health and safety is seen as being taken seriously and we can see that we're getting results, there are a low amount of injuries and everyone feels safe, that empowers the workplace and creates a safe culture. And that's really what is the purpose of the legislation. Everyone's involved, they see results, and they feel safe. So that's a key element of obtaining data and evidence and forwarding it back to the workplace. The next criteria is safe work procedures and practices. Okay, here we're talking about adherence documentation, induction training, ergonomics, which is the relationship between people and their work environment. And in here with IDT, we're specifically talking about the computing environment. Okay, specific practices, okay, to be followed. Okay, and ergonomics is an example of that. And ICT specific issues. So in relation to adherence documentation, we've got things such as SOPs, plans, instructions, and established policies by an organization. So all of these can be developed in relation to safe work practices so people can refer to them to ensure they're doing the right thing within the workplace. Okay, induction training, okay, is used to train people when they first enter a work environment. Okay, when you're being inducted, that's usually your introduction to the workplace, and safety is a key point there. You need to be inducted in safety to know you can work in that environment safely. Okay, we've already mentioned ergonomics, which is the relationship between people and their work environment, and then you can see it once again. It is considered a safe practice as well. Other safe practices may relate to the use of substances, such as cleaning materials within the workplace. Okay, how are they stored? What labeling is on it to show you if it is a toxic substance and could cause harm or could be flammable? That's all important to know. General housekeeping in order to ensure that the place is tidy, because a messy workplace could lead to trip hazards, okay, or stuff falling down and on other workers. So we need to ensure that we keep a safe working environment through just keeping it tidy. The use of PPE such as goggles and ear muffs to protect eyes and ears, and we're all seeing it as well with face masks in the work environment to reduce spreading of infections related to viruses, and general tools we use as well in the workplace. We need to know how to use them, and we'll be taught that in our induction training or prior with our just training when we learn how to do a job from our tertiary education. And then finally, a big one in the ICT industry, electricity. Okay, because electricity has the element to kill. Okay, so we need to know if we are going to be working with electricity, how do we work with it safely? The final area is that of incidents, accidents, and emergencies. Okay, so what to do when an accident occurs or an incident takes place, and if it gets to the level of emergency, how do we respond? So here we're looking at the costs of workplace injury, types of incidents, accidents, and emergencies, the application of first aid, how to respond, and what strategies we can do to reduce these from taking place. So in relation to the costs of workplace injury, when someone gets injured, it's not just the physical injury they get. That's known as a human cost, okay? The actual injury to the human, a broken arm, a broken leg, or, something else that might even be worse, okay? They are the human costs there. But there are other categories of results in relation to the cost. There's the social cost in that others within the workplace aren't going to feel safe if they just saw their co-worker get injured by an element. They're not going to want to do that. So it has a social impact of people not feeling safe within the workplace, or being worried about the actual person that got injured, or not wanting to end up in the same way. There's an economic cost which relates to money. When someone is out of action for work, okay, employers will need to pay compensation to that worker to help them rehabilitate and pay them while they are off work. they also need to pay another staff member to fill in for that worker. So it's almost like they're paying double, okay, as well as extra fees as well in compensation as a result of workplace injury. So there's a big financial cost. And then there's the organizational cost, okay, in that if this gets publicly known, it's going to impact on the name of the company. Okay, they'll be known as an unsafe workplace. People might want to work for that organization. People might want to interact and do business with that organization. So there are many costs related to workplace injury outside of the actual physical injury itself. Okay, when responding to actual workplace injuries. Now, one of the ways of responding is first aid itself, which you can see listed above. Okay, but in the case of emergency situations, you've got to actually contact maybe an ambulance. Okay, emergency services triple O, but it's also 112 as well. Okay, depending on what you're using to contact, which is better through mobile phones. Okay. Usually, if you know your first aid, that is actually the first thing you do. You get someone to call emergency services while you apply first aid there. Okay, seeking assistance obviously means obtaining that emergency service, but also using the people around you too to support, okay, and do what you need to do. Okay, if you do need to apply first aid to help cycle with you while you do that first aid, okay, whether just to keep others safe or keep away, we need to do that. Okay, and obviously look out for emergency signals. Okay, is there a fire alarm going off? Okay, or is there a blinking light going off or something indicating there is further danger going on within the workplace, which may mean that you need to evacuate from the workplace there. Okay, so I hope this has given you an understanding of what kind of is involved in this unit of safety as a part of the HSC course requirements for IDT. This is the safety unit in relation to IDT. Obviously, there are other requirements in relation to competencies and your achievement of your VET competencies, but here we're particularly focusing on the requirements as a part of the actual HSC course in relation to your study. So I hope this has helped.